Tell you what, all I know is 911 has come a long way. Absolutely a long way. It was really challenging. First of all, myself, as well as the other members of the commission, you have to understand we're ordinary citizens and we don't understand a lot of this because we're not working hand in hand every day on this. And so when we had commission meetings, we had to rely on staff. We had to rely on the people that run the PSAPs, and we had intense conversations at the committee meetings. I could remember many of them because everybody wanted a PSAP, and we didn't have all that money to give everybody a PSAP. So we had to make some hard decisions. Sometimes we were liked, sometimes we weren't. Yeah, we did the best we could with what we had.
Before the first district was formed, Harris County, in 1983, it was a matter of the bell system translated 911 to a 10-digit number and sent it to the largest police department in the area. That meant that when they answered the phone, they didn't know who you were, they didn't know where you were located, and so they had to do a lot of inquiring before they could even determine if they could solve your problem or if they had to transfer you somewhere. So it was a very difficult, time-consuming thing, and 911, we talk about seconds count, and so if you're having some kind of an emergency, you know, you're not going to be ready to answer all those kinds of questions. So the legislature in 1983 passed a law that allowed the formation of Harris County and the implementation of Enhanced 911, which made it possible to send your call to the right place with the right information. And so they could go directly to what's your problem, not who are you and where are you located. And then over the years, you know, the legislature passed another law that allowed districts to be formed other than Harris County. And then 2 years later, in 1987, they passed a law that allowed the formation of the commission that we know today.
Joe Trowbridge, God rest his soul, was with DPS on the study commission, and he was the first one to be approached, and he had reached out to me and said, I was with APD at the time, and said, you know, they want to do this program, this statewide 911, and they're not going to give us much time. And he said, I just don't think this can be done. And I said, sure it can. Because if you were in the 911 space at the time, you know, Bill Carter and other leaders in our state had the vision to do legislation. If you were in the 911 business, you were always being asked for guidance on what it would take to deploy. So we entered this with a belief, even though the legislation was local option participation. Some people probably don't even remember that, but we had 24 existing 911 districts from prior legislation. And then we introduced this law that basically says those entities are grandfathered. 120,000 population counties can opt to be a district. Everybody else, the cities and the counties, have to approve by resolution. Well then, you know, the size of this state, that was a big undertaking to know you had to go to every entity. And the vision of Jim Ray and those folks that worked with the councils of government back in the study commission days to put them in as our partners for planning and deployment was actually a brilliant vision, because even though COGS hadn't been in that technology space, it didn't take long to get them up to speed, but what they were really good at was planning. And so when, you know, we got into this with this short time frame, right? We didn't have all that much time to plan in accordance with the law. And so we just never believed we couldn't do it.
How do you locate those people that have any emergencies sometime when they don't know where they are? They don't know their location or whatnot, and we didn't have all this automatic location technology at that time. So we thought, well, it needs to be done. We need to everybody needs to have an address where we could send the emergency services to if they call in. And so that was worked very well, except that the people that lived out in the country, a lot of them didn't want people to know where they lived. And so they were kind of fighting us with that. But we were able to convince them finally that that tree marker or that big rock down on the highway wasn't good enough if they were have somebody in their house that was dying or having a real emergency. So we needed to be able to get the services to them as quickly as possible.
You know, coming out of the telecommunications industry was wireless. And so we found ourselves caught up in what that meant, that way of communicating meant to 911. And so we got involved, and there were several facets to that challenge. One was just the technology itself, and that was a national challenge, and that wasn't just a state of Texas challenge. And Texas being Texas, ended up being in the forefront, I think, of dealing with some of those issues, particularly the technology issue at a national level, regulatory issues too, working with the FCC. Mary was very involved in that. Then, here locally, we had issues like how do we fund, wireless 911? And how do we take a funding mechanism that was really focused on landline service and make that work for wireless service? That involved, working with wireless companies and telecom, other telecommunication companies, and kind of working through the, how do we do it and the approach, and coming up with something that was acceptable to everyone. And I think what you see now throughout Texas, but throughout the rest of the country, is a communication, a continuation of that effort with wireless. In today's world, I know for much of the state, 80 to 85% of our total annual call volume is generated by wireless devices. And of course, that technology continues to change now that we're moving into a fully digital world. And so we're back to the board again on how to best make that work and how to move on.
First day was September 11th, 2001, and I was on my way into downtown from Lakeway, and I heard on the radio, I was listening to the FM news, and I heard that the plane had flown into the World Trade Center in New York. And I kind of thought, well, it's pretty strange. Maybe, some small, light general aviation aircraft got in a bad position and wound up going into a building. And then shortly after that, the second one had hit the World Trade Center. And so everybody, even the radio announcers, were guessing that this is something unusual. And certainly, as we all know, it did turn out to be very unusual, which really launched the wireless location information project that we had. Everybody was clamoring for that capability so they could locate people in case of a major emergency, which we didn't know what the full nature of it was yet. So that was my first day, and my life changed a good bit based on the events of that day up in New York City and Pennsylvania and Washington.
When I came, we were just implementing selective routing, which is a big improvement, and it adds data and accuracy to routing for 911. And we had to do that because we were implementing wireless phase 1. And so we implemented wireless phase 1 across the state, and that was a big undertaking, and the COGS did a great job of helping us get that done. And then after that, we had VoIP come along and all sorts of issues with that, so we had to once again adapt for VoIP. And then we implemented phase 2 wireless, which meant we had to have all the mapping in place, and we got into the GIS world for 911. And so instead of just seeing an address on a screen, the dispatcher sees a point on a map. And so all of those things have occurred since I've been here in 20 years, and it just is ever evolving. And I always tell people I have never had a boring day at work.
Janet Lee was the public ed person at that time, and she let me go along to a lot of the meetings. We met with the puppeteers and working with the public educators in Texas when they did a lot of the campaign to name Reddy Fox, and they had school kids coloring pictures of Reddy Fox. So it was really exciting. And I got to go along with a couple of our commissioners, Representative Carter, to a 911 for Kids golf tournament in California, and that was where we debuted the walk-around costume. So I escorted Reddy on the golf course so that folks could take pictures with him. I can't remember which hole it was, but we were at one of the holes. So it was a great time. So when I was doing public education, and at that time was when we created the logo that you guys use today for the agency, and I kind of project managed the creation of the first CSEC website. So we started doing some other things, and at the same time, we had realized pretty much when the Reddy Fox video came out that we'd made an error in not creating one of the phones as a cell phone. So that was when we first started, Robert came on board, and I said, hey, I think we're going to create Cell Phone Sally. So I kind of feel like Cell Phone Sally's mom because I worked with a designer.
One of the things that I would consider my fondest memories of CSEC is being involved in the creation of the Cell Phone Sally DVD. That and the materials, that's been a really big highlight of my career in 911. I felt very excited when we were creating the DVD. It was, it really fulfilled a lot of the things that I like to do, the creative end, the education end, and getting to see it go from just some ideas on paper to full fruition of a DVD with characters talking, and then seeing the kids react to the DVD. It just has been a huge highlight of my career, and I'm so proud to have been one of Cell Phone Sally's moms.
You know, we awarded a number of awards to call takers that were involved in particular incidents, and we would, you know, we'd have a member of the commission or one of us would stand up and read the incident, and we'd make the award. And often, those were so heartfelt, and that I had commissioners that had a hard time just getting through, you know, presenting the context of the award. So there's got to be a big part of that. That's just what we do for the public and the public safety piece of that.
I always have enjoyed so much the fact that you folks have invited me to come to the conventions and help give the awards to these wonderful, wonderful people out there that are call takers, that are so interested in it, and all of the technical stuff that all of the industry people have been involved in. It's just been a matter of teamwork, teamwork, teamwork. And that's the only way that we could get it to happen.
I think the common thread we all have is the passion that we can make a difference in someone's life that we'll never meet, right? And I mean, I have my own personal stories of a friend having a heart attack. This was before 911 days. You had to use a coin in a payphone. I didn't have a coin. I had to break into a cash register to get the operator to connect me to a local responder. And my friend passed away, and it took so long to get help. So, you know, at that time in my life, I was with the city utility office in that tragedy. And I think, you know, there was a reason I walked this path. And I would think if all of us who stay in this business for decades, literally decades, it's that belief that we can make a difference. And now it's an obligation. I've said many times, I won't retire until I see policy that requires MLTS enterprise systems to send both callback and location data. I won't retire until I see our country in a mass deployment of IP. I have a personal obligation not to leave our country in an antiquated state because we worked so hard to get E911. It's natural that we leave a legacy for our grandchildren and their children that says our country is in a public safety infrastructure that can manage the likes of Hurricane Harvey, right? That we don't have hardened networks that our public safety agencies can't quickly modify and go to another county, still get their emergency calls and respond to these people in need. So those of us that do that, I think we're just all in sort of this automatic, this is our calling in life. And that was my destiny, and that's where I'll be.
Appreciate that TARC, as a representative of those 24 entities, we worked together with them when I first came on board, and we had some problems, and they gave us some good answers to them. And they weren't looking for anything special, they were just looking for what they were entitled to and what they should have been allocated. And we made some inroads with the legislature. I enjoyed working with the representatives from the RPCs and TARC itself. They were very beneficial to the program, and I think we got a lot more done when we were cooperating than if we were fighting over it.
CSEC's always been in my life because that's how we began this program. However, in the beginning, it was run primarily by telephone companies. And there were a lot of issues back then about how this all fit together and who was taking advantage of everybody else, but it was an advisory commission in the beginning. We didn't know how much teeth they had, but there was also guys behind them yelling and screaming about what they wanted to have done in the telephone companies, and I didn't know how CSEC fit into that thing, and things were not as good. It was awkward to be there because the advisory commission was a little bit rugged at times. But I can tell you right now, in the last 5 years, I've never seen a more pleasant environment in my life. The functionality between staff, CSEC, and us is great.
When you see that you had a part of saving these people's lives and saving making it happen, that's a personal satisfaction thing that you can't really get anywhere else.
I think Harvey brought more people back together than it ever could have imagined. People helping people, neighbors helping neighbors, everybody working as a team and not fighting each other. And that's what I admire about the great state of Texas and 911.